Ralph Howard's scarred face twisted into a snarl as he punched the accelerator, his heavily armed fighter screaming towards the Prilorian fleet. Those alien fucks exterminated humanity centuries ago, but they failed. And now, the last humans hid in the shadows, quietly amassing strength, preparing to strike back and make the alien scum pay in blood. Ralph was born in a filthy refugee camp on a nameless world, raised on stories of Earth's fall. The Prilorians came without warning, raining destruction from the skies, slaughtering billions. Cities became rubble, oceans boiled, continents burned. Humanity's grand expansion into the stars was shattered in mere days. The few million survivors fled, forced to eke out a meager existence in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Officially, humans were extinct, a minor footnote in galactic history. The Prilorian Empire seized humanity's former worlds, led by the ruthless Emperor Laros. For generations, the broken remnants of mankind suffered in squalid camps or hid in deep bunkers. But in secret they rebuilt, gathering resources, forging alliances, developing new weapons, waiting for their chance to return and avenge the fallen. Now, after decades of careful preparation, the Human Liberation Front was finally ready to begin its campaign of retribution, and Ralph, a grizzled ex-Marine, would lead the charge. His small ship was packed with experimental weapons, reverse-engineered from stolen Prilorian tech. Powerful railguns, vortex torpedoes, and quantum resonance warheads able to smash through the enemy's defenses with ease. This opening salvo would catch the complacent Prilorians with their guard down. For the first time in centuries, alien blood would spill, worlds would burn, and the Prilorian Empire would face a foe that could fight back. Ralph had trained his entire life for this moment, enduring brutal conditions and grueling drills. He had no delusions. He would likely die in the coming battles, but he would sell his life dearly. As his proximity sensors pinged with multiple hostile contacts, Ralph armed his weapons. The Prilorian ships loomed ahead, their hulls bristling with powerful cannons and shimmering with impenetrable energy shields. Ralph's mouth curled into a feral grin. They had no idea what was coming. Humanity would have its revenge, and the galaxy would tremble before its fury once more. A searing bolt of plasma from the Prilorian patrol craft slammed into the Retribution's hull, sending Ralph lurching in his harness. The cockpit exploded with the shrill scream of warning alarms. Shields were down to 15%. Armor plating on the port side was compromised, but Ralph didn't allow the hit to shake his focus. His fingers danced across the weapons console, locking onto the offending patrol ship. A squeeze of the trigger sent a deadly spread of plasma torpedoes lancing through the void. The glowing red orbs struck home, puncturing the Prilorian ship's shields to blossom into angry fireballs against its hull. The stricken craft shuddered, belched gouts of flame, then shattered into an expanding cloud of molten debris. Ralph had no time to celebrate his small victory. More hostile signatures flared on his scopes as additional Prilorian warships bore down on his position, weapons charged and primed. Fingers of coherent light stabbed out at the Retribution, splashing against rapidly failing shields in blinding cascades. Sweat beaded on Ralph's brow as he wove his ship through the deadly latticework, deploying chaff and flares in his wake. His railguns and point defenses lashed out, claiming 2 more enemy ships in quick succession. But still, they came, heedless of their losses, driven to erase humanity's last hope. Just as the Retribution's shields guttered out, multiple new contacts appeared on the periphery of Ralph's sensors. A ship, larger than any he'd ever seen, thundered out of hyperspace on plumes of Cherenkov radiation. It was a mountain of armor and gun ports, bristling with enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble. The vengeance had arrived. Even as the Retribution shook with the impact of multiple laser hits on bare hull, the Vengeance's broadsides erupted with searing light. Prilorian ships vanished, instantly reduced to clouds of irradiated vapor by the flagship's monstrous batteries. The enemy attack faltered as the aliens scrambled to regroup in the face of this new threat. "I thought I taught you better than to take on a whole damn fleet by yourself, Howard." The gruff voice of Admiral Zane Ryder, Ralph's mentor and the closest thing to a father he'd ever known, crackled across the comm. Despite the burns and contusions he'd suffered during the furious engagement, Ralph found himself grinning. "Just softening them up for you, old man." The Vengeance and Retribution fell into formation, their gun crews working in seamless unison as they tore into the Prelorian ranks. The difference in power was clear. The human ship's weapons cleaved through shields and armor like paper, while the Prelorians' shots splashed harmlessly against the flagship's layered void screens and reactive plating. One by one the alien ships died, holed by railgun slugs or ruptured by torpedo spreads. Not a single human ship was lost, though damage reports flooded in from numerous vessels. The Prelorians fought to the last, but their determination was no match for Separi or human technology, and the righteous fury of a people long oppressed. As the final enemy craft disintegrated into a plume of vaporized alloy, Ryder's voice echoed through the fleet's comnet. "All ships, set course for Pyros Prime. We're taking this fight to the Prelorians' front door. It's time the Emperor answered for his crimes." The ships dropped out of hyperspace into a maelstrom of destruction. Pyros Prime hung in the void before them, a rust-red orb bristling with orbital platforms and ringed by the full might of the Prelorian armada. At its heart loomed the Invincible, a behemoth bristling with enough firepower to reduce a continent to molten slag. On the flagship's bridge stood High Admiral Zorgax, his craggy features twisted into a mask of hate as he beheld the human fleet. "All ships, engage the enemy," Zorgax roared. "Burn the hairless apes from the stars." The Prelorian fleet surged forward, disgorging swarms of fighters and unleashing blistering barrages from their forward batteries. The human ships responded in kind, their weapons ripping through the void to slam into enemy shields and hulls. Ralph led Red Squadron in a daring attack run on the Invincible, his fighter shuddering as it wove through a latticework of point defense fire. His wingmates fanned out behind him, lancing the Prelorian flagship's shields with blasts from their pulse cannons. "Stay tight and watch your backs," Ralph barked over the comm. "We need to draw their fire away from the Vengeance." Zorgax snarled as he watched the human fighters dance around his ship. "Concentrate all fire on that lead craft," he bellowed. "I want that pilot's head." The Invincible's main cannon swiveled to track Ralph's fighter, its muzzle glowing with hellish light. Ralph juked and rolled, barely evading the searing beam that sliced through the void. But his wingman wasn't so lucky. The blast caught the hapless pilot's fighter, dead center, vaporizing it in a blinding flash. Ralph's heart clenched as he watched his friend's ship disintegrate. Grief and rage surged through him, and he gritted his teeth. "Red Squadron, form up on me," he growled. "We're going in for another run." The remaining fighters fell in behind Ralph as he dove towards the Invincible, cannons blazing. This time their fire found its mark, punching through the flagship's weakened shields to gouge molten furrows across its hull. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Ryder saw his chance. "All batteries, target the Invincible," he roared. "Pour it on, lads. Let's send these bastards straight to hell." The Vengeance's guns erupted, hurling a storm of high-yield shells and searing energy beams at the Prelorian flagship. The Invincible shuddered under the onslaught, its hull fracturing as explosions blossomed across its surface. Zorgax howled with rage as warning klaxons blared on the bridge around him. He knew his ship was doomed, but he would be damned if he let the humans claim victory. His clawed finger stabbed down on a pulsing red button on his command console, activating the Invincible's self-destruct sequence. Ralph's heart seized as he saw the telltale flare of an overloading reactor core deep within the Prelorian flagship. He knew he had only seconds to act. "Admiral, the Invincible is going critical," he shouted over the comm. "I'm going in, all ships fall back." Ignoring Ryder's shouts of protest, Ralph threw his fighter into a screaming dive, lining up on the Invincible's bridge. He could see Zorgax through the viewport, the Prelorian Admiral's face contorted in a rictus of hate. Ralph closed his eyes and whispered a final prayer. Then he rammed his fighter into the Invincible's bridge at full speed, smashing through the viewport to slam into Zorgax in a fiery explosion. The Invincible vanished in a blinding flash as its reactor core detonated, the shockwave hurling nearby ships tumbling end over end. The Prilorian fleet reeled, thrown into chaos by the loss of their flagship and admiral. Seizing the opening, Ryder rallied the human ships. "All craft punch through their lines," he roared. "Make for the surface. We're taking this fight to the Emperor himself." Engines flaring, the battered but unbroken human fleet dove towards Pyros Prime, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle was far from over, but they had struck a crushing blow against their hated foe, and Ralph's sacrifice would be remembered for generations to come. The drop pods slammed into the rubble-strewn streets of the Prilorian capital, disgorging Admiral Ryder's elite marines into the fray. Plasma bolts and razor shrapnel filled the air as the humans clashed with the remaining Prilorian soldiers and automated defenses. The acrid stench of burnt metal and ozone hung thick. Sergeant Jax Reeves hit the ground running, his pulse rifle barking as he cut down a trio of Prilorian troopers. Grief and rage churned in his gut, the loss of his best friend Ralph still raw. He channeled that pain into every trigger pull, every grenade toss. Ryder's grizzled voice crackled over the comms, rallying the Marines forward. They advanced through the war-torn cityscape, blasting apart enemy barricades and fortifications. Prilorian bodies littered the streets, the humans showing no mercy. A hulking Prilorian combat mech lumbered into view, its heavy cannons swiveling to target the human forces. Jax didn't hesitate. He charged forward, dodging a hail of cannon fire and slamming a jetpack onto the mech's armored chassis. The explosion ripped the machine apart, showering the area with flaming debris. "Keep pushing," Jax roared over the din of battle. "For Earth, for Ralph!" The Marines rallied behind him, smashing through the last pockets of resistance. The palace gates loomed ahead, guarded by a phalanx of Prilorian honor guards. The genetically engineered super soldiers towered over the humans, clad in impenetrable power armor and wielding devastating energy glaives. A storm of plasma fire erupted from the honor guards' weapons, scything through the human ranks. Marines fell by the dozens, their armor ruptured and flesh seared. But for every human that fell, another surged forward to take their place, screaming battle cries and oaths of vengeance. Jax found himself face to face with a monstrous honor guard, a killer known as Kravos the Executioner. The alien warrior stood twice Jax's height, his armor painted with the blood of countless victims. Kravos lunged forward, his glaive humming with deadly energy. Jax met the blow with his combat knife, the monomolecular blade sparking against the glaive's power field. The two warriors traded blows in a whirlwind of violence, their strength and speed pushed to the limits. Bones cracked and flesh tore as they pummeled each other with crushing force. Jax could feel his ribs fracturing, his blood vessels bursting, but he fought on, memories of Ralph's sacrifice driving him forward. In a final desperate gambit, Jax ducked under a decapitating slash from Kravos's glaive and drove his knife up under the alien's chin, puncturing through the weaker armor there. The blade punched into Kravos's brain, and the mighty warrior collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. All around, the honor guards wavered as they saw their champion fall. The Marines pressed the attack, blasting the elite warriors apart with concentrated fire. Step by blood-soaked step, they forced their way through the shattered palace gates. Admiral Ryder and his strike team carved a bloody path through the palace's opulent corridors. The ornate walls were scarred by plasma fire, priceless artifacts shattered beneath booted feet. Prilorian guards fell before the humans' relentless advance, their weapons useless against the vengeful fury of Ryder's Marines. With a final burst of gunfire, the strike team breached the massive doors of the throne room. They stormed inside, weapons trained on the figure seated upon the throne. But what they saw made even the hardened veterans recoil in disgust. Emperor Laros, once a towering figure of menace, was now a withered husk. His body was ravaged by centuries of cybernetic enhancements and life-prolonging treatments, a grotesque fusion of flesh and machine. Tubes and wires snaked from his decrepit form, permanently binding him to his throne. Laros's sunken eyes gleamed with malice as he beheld the humans before him. "You are too late," he rasped, his voice a metallic whisper. "In a matter of minutes, this palace's power core will overload, wiping this city and everything around it off the face of the planet." Ryder's grip tightened on his rifle, but Laros continued, a note of triumph in his voice. And that's not all. The explosion will trigger my sleeper agents hidden throughout the galaxy. They will rain destruction upon your colonies, your installations. Humanity will be driven back to the brink once more. The Marines exchanged looks of horror, but Ryder's face hardened with resolve. He turned to Jax, his voice urgent. Sergeant Reeves, take the team and evacuate immediately. Warn the fleet of the impending attacks. I'll handle Laros. Jax hesitated, torn between his duty and his desire for revenge. But Ryder's eyes met his, a silent plea passing between them. With a curt nod, Jax rallied the strike team, and they reluctantly filed out of the throne room, leaving Ryder to face Laros alone. The Emperor laughed, a grating sound that echoed through the chamber. And so the mighty Admiral Zane Ryder sacrifices himself for the greater good. How noble, how futile. Ryder's lips curled into a humorless smile. Not as futile as you might think. He reached into a pouch at his belt, withdrawing a small spherical device. You know what this is. Laros's eyes widened as he recognized the weapon. A singularity bomb. Impossible. The power requirements alone would be... Enough to consume us both, Ryder finished grimly, along with this entire palace and your precious power core. Your grand plan dies with you, you son of a bitch. Laros struggled against his throne's restraints, his withered body straining with impotent rage. You wouldn't dare. You'll be destroyed as well. Ryder's thumb hovered over the bomb's activation switch. A small price to pay to end your reign of terror once and for all. He locked eyes with Laros, a lifetime of hatred and loss etched into his weathered features. This is for Earth, for Ralph, for every soul your kind has ever snuffed out. Burn in hell, you bastard. With a final battle cry, Ryder activated the singularity bomb and lunged at Laros. The throne room erupted in blinding light as the device detonated, the air itself seeming to shatter. A swirling vortex of destruction engulfed the chamber, tearing the palace apart from within. Laros's screams were lost in the maelstrom, as he and Ryder were consumed by the ravenous singularity. The entire capital city shook as the palace imploded, the hungry black hole devouring everything in its path. Jax and the surviving strike team barely managed to reach their dropships before the shockwave hit. They watched in awe and horror as the singularity collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but a gaping crater where the heart of the Prylorian Empire had once stood. In the battle's aftermath, the remaining Prylorian forces quickly surrendered, their will to fight extinguished with their emperor's demise. The surviving Marines gathered in the ruins of the capital, their faces etched with a mixture of triumph and grief. Centuries of war had finally come to an end, but the cost had been immense. Earth was avenged, but the scars left by the Prylorians would linger for generations. As Jax and his comrades boarded their ships, their thoughts turned to those who had sacrificed everything to make this victory possible. Ralph, Admiral Ryder, and countless other heroes had given their lives so that humanity might reclaim its place among the stars. Their names would be remembered, their deeds celebrated in the annals of history. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The galaxy would never forget the day the once broken remnants of mankind rose from the ashes of despair to topple an empire. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, I liked the story, and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.